Hello there, my name is Karen, I'm with Stewart Title, and today I have the pleasure of sitting with Derek from Terracon. He's going to talk to us a little bit about the Brownfields funding. But before we get to that, Derek, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It was a pleasure to have you. And Derek, prior to this, you joined us for our commercial roundtable, and wow, what do you think of that group, Derek?
It's a good group. I always learn something. It's kind of nice to see how folks network and how Stewart Title supports that. And there's always something to take away. And I've met some great clients there, and I appreciate that you guys are always having those.
Well, we always appreciate you coming. Our clients always love it when they can pick your brain and you're right there in the room with all this information for them. It's great. So, what does Terracon do?
So Terracon, we are a multidisciplined engineering firm. In Tucson, our main service lines is we do geotechnical engineering, pre-development in the materials testing in the construction phase, and also environmental consulting, which is a wide breadth of services. That is my technical background. I'm the office manager, but we have been here 28 years and we've worked on all sorts of projects and we love our community. So.
Wow, 28 years. That's awesome. So tell me, what is Brownfields funding?
So Brownfields funding, communities all across the country, it's a very competitive application process, and they go after these community-wide assessment grants, which can bring money into their community that can be used for environmental due diligence. So that's kind of the funding mechanism, and right now City of Tucson has funding and City of South Tucson has funding. People in the real estate industry can leverage this funding for their environmental due diligence needs at no cost to them whatsoever. So it's usually designated for what we call a brownfield site. Is not necessarily a contaminated site. It might be an underutilized site, it might be an underdeveloped site. It's usually in an infill area, and we're really trying to spur the marketability of the property so things can be done that have a net positive benefit for the community.
Yeah, and that's going to bring extra value to our commercial real estate community.
Yes.
So that's awesome. How long have you been involved in Brownfields?
I have been since I switched careers a little later in life. The first firm I worked for was involved with Brownfields with the City of Tucson. So I've been doing it since 2008. We have moved hundreds of thousands of dollars in Brownfields funding through this community that has spurred real estate transactions, helped with road widening. So I've been doing it a while.
Wow. So can you do this anywhere in Tucson, or are there like particular areas?
Right now, there are grant focus areas. City of Tucson is focusing on the La Dulce Cultural and Business Corridor. That's South 12th Avenue. That goes from about Irvington down to Drexel and about a half a mile on either side. So that's one focus area for the City of Tucson. The other one would be the Thrive in the 05. I think you're familiar.
Oh, yeah.
But that goes from Speedway to Miracle Mile, if you're going south to north, and then from the interstate east to about Stone Avenue. And then, of course, City of South Tucson, where they're consulting on their grant, anything within their city limits could be eligible to use this funding.
Oh, that's excellent. So what can the funding cover?
It covers all your basic environmental due diligence needs. It does, most times, as far as we'll go, is a phase 1 environmental site assessment, because a lot of times we find out a property doesn't actually need further assessment. But it can cover your phase 2 environmental site assessment, and then if you're looking at raising structures or renovating structures, it can also cover the asbestos and lead-based paint work that you'd be required to do for redevelopment.
That's excellent. So specifically, how does this funding benefit the community as a whole?
Well, as a whole, if the funding is going to go somewhere, right? So
yeah.
if money is going to be spent by the federal government, we'd rather it be spent in our community,
yes.
Right? So on past grant cycles, we have seen small businesses be able to tackle a problematic property and open up. We have seen the funding used on the properties that the city acquires for road widening. So there was a lot of properties on Broadway, and there will be a lot of properties on Grant where this funding was used. So there's always, I think, if you can bring money into your community, there's a net benefit. On the private side, we have listing agents who are sitting, they got their sign on a property, they're trying to move a property. Now imagine if they had also a phase 1, if they needed a phase 2, all that in hand. Everyone's in a hurry right now in their due diligence period because they want to lock in their interest rates.
Yeah.
So a proactive seller could have all this in hand, and when the real estate transaction came through, whether they have a buyer now or not, we will figure out, we can, with the program, we can extend reliance to the buyer, we can extend reliance to their lender, and pretty much any mechanism for a conventional loan, or I know enough about real estate to be dangerous on the loan side. For SBA, and you guys have something called a seller buyback, but we've made it work with all those different things, and we can continue to do that.
Oh, that's awesome. You've even worked with seller carrybacks, so that's
Yes.
awesome. Who can leverage the funding?
Any property owner in these target areas can leverage the funding. There are some eligibility requirements, and it's probably long for this conversation, but generally within 1 to 2 phone calls, we can let you know whether your property is eligible. We've seen prospective purchasers leverage the funding with cooperation from the seller, because the seller has to sign an access agreement. We've seen the city leverage the funding, as long as the cities, the grantee, the awards, City of South Tucson, City of Tucson, as long as they're not a responsible party for things that may have impacted the site, we should be able to navigate eligibility. So if you're near the target area, we can make it work properly.
Wow. So it doesn't matter then if you're actually in the target area, there's some flexibility?
There is some flexibility. One, if we can make the property, if we can tie it into these target areas, like they have a benefit to that community as well. As grants near the end and they have a little less money, they might let us open it up, so we can have those conversations with the city on the behalf of the broker or property owners. There are also, probably too long for this conversation, there are state level brownfields funding.
Oh.
It's a little bit of a different process. It's usually reserved for municipalities, nonprofits in more rural areas. But we have a great relationship we're on the state brownfields contract as well. So we can have those conversations and see if that's a viable option. There's some tricks of the trade that we got there. So.
Okay, awesome. Well, leading into my next question, and in the Tucson target areas, how long does the process take?
Well, on the phase 1 side, it doesn't take much longer than it would if someone was reaching out to me to do a phase 1 like they were on the private side. So standard turnaround time for phase 1, depending on the site, is about 15 to 20 business days. With the brownfields, there's usually an extra 5 business days in there because I need to have conversations, with the broker, with the client. We need to have the seller on board, and then we need to have those initial conversations with the municipality. So on the phase 1 side, it can go pretty smoothly. We always do, speed of government works a little bit different than the speed of business, so we always recommend people be proactive. Where the hangup can come is on the asbestos and the site investigation. We have to submit sampling and analysis plans for EPA approval. Those documents generally take about 10 to 15 business days to generate. We have to know what our scope of work is and all that. On the EPA side, they can sometimes take 2 to 4 months to approve. Once they're approved and you're past that waiting period, everything moves quickly just like it would with the private sector. It's just that little extra waiting time, and that's why I always recommend to listing agents or whoever, if you're thinking about using these, be proactive. You have nothing to lose, right? And then if you had the phase 1 in your hand when you're selling the property, you could make your transaction go like that, lock in those interest rates, right? That's what everyone's trying to
That's
do.
what we're all trying to do right now. So tell me, who can we call if we're interested? So if I have one of my commercial real estate professionals reach out to me and say, I heard Derek's video, who do I get in touch with?
I would tell them to start the conversation, reach out directly to me.
All right.
520-798-4847. And then we'll have an initial conversation, and then I can handle the conversations with the city and bring everything together, and we can move forward. A lot of times when I'm talking to a broker, we have the initial conversation, they bring that information back to their client, and then bring us to the table, and then we all sit down and have a conversation. And that's why we like our professional real estate community so much, because they've helped us move a lot of funding, and we've seen a lot of cool things happen with it.
That's excellent. I know a lot of people already know Derek. Derek's very in front of the commercial real estate community here in Tucson. But if there's somebody that you would want to find out about this that you feel might not know at this point, who are they? Who needs to know this?
The easy audience is listing agents. They already have their sign in front of a property. getting them on board with the sellers, saying, hey, when we do get interest in your site, we can have all this environmental work done, completed, we can extend it to the buyer with no conflict of interest because we're using grant funding. That is kind of the ideal one. If prospective purchasers come along and they're looking at a site, it kind of depends on their timeline. We have done some creative things where we've done phase ones with brownfields money, but we've done the site investigation with private sector money for them to move. So we have a lot of different options to try to make this work with timeframes, but the earlier the phone call is, the more likely we are gonna have success.
There you go. You heard it right from Derek. The sooner you move forward, if there's any question in your mind when you're looking to list the property, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's when you want to reach out to them. So aside from Brownsfields, are there any other funding mechanisms for environmental due diligence?
So there are. There's the state response grant with the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, and we're on that consultant list as well. We won that on call. And so with that one, it's a little bit different of a process because it's a site-specific application process. And we've been successful. A really cool one we did was the old Tombstone High School.
Oh.
And so we walked them through, we helped them fill out their grant application, we got it over to the state, and we were able to do due diligence. They had been trying to move that property for 8 years, and the major sticking point was how much asbestos is in the building, because there was some obvious indications of 9x9 tile and popcorn ceilings, and that was a big concern for potential purchasers. And once we were able to do that assessment, then they had a much better understanding of what their price tag was going to be to make that building to whatever they're planning on making into it. And shortly after we did that, they were able to move the property.
Wow. Well, this is a great value. I mean, to go in, to be proactive. I mean, I always tell my clients, be proactive, get your early bird title ordered, get your, all of your, environmentals done, reach out to Derek. Derek, thank you for joining us today. Can you do me one more favor? Can you tell me again what your phone number is, but actually look at the camera right there and tell them.
My phone number is 520-798-4847. That's my direct line. My cell is 520-551-7887. And then if you wanted to reach me by email, that would be derek.koller@terracon.com. And any of those ways you can reach me anytime. We pride ourselves on being responsive, and we love our interactions with the real estate community here in Tucson. So a lot of cool projects.
Well, thank you, Derek. Thank you for asking Stuart and myself and Bob to help get the word out today. We really appreciate it.
I so appreciate you giving us this platform, and awesome.
All right. Excellent. Thank you.